I'm going to be making bread while I talk about how I got this private practice model clinic position. I'll be talking about some of the places that I applied, what I was looking for when I was picking a clinic, the questions that they asked me. I think those are the things I'm going to talk about. I have already spent most of the day baking bread. More than half of the day I spent trying to figure out how to make this chocolate. So I'm making a chocolate bread swirl, and you make the chocolate. So the recipe wanted me to put it in the microwave and it was just not working. So I did a water bath. So I had to make that 3 times. And then now I'm making the dough and I'm combining it with the chocolate and we're trying to see if it's gonna work. So first of all, the places that I applied, I was looking for places where I could continue learning and doing Gestalt therapy. Gestalt therapy is a humanistic type of therapy, and so there aren't that many places that do that now. A lot of places really focus on cognitive behavioral therapy. And so DBT, ACT, all of those things that are a little bit more tools based. And yeah, that is a little bit more common nowadays. So it did really narrow down the places that I wanted to apply because I wanted to continue doing this specific type of therapy. So one of the places I applied was like working with younger adults, teens online. I knew of the place through like my supervisor was like supervising someone from there or something else, something like that. So the interview process looked like first having like 2 or 3 chats with the director. She was also a supervisor. And so these chats were kind of like interviews, but they weren't called interviews. Most of it, I was asking questions. It was questions like, oh, what kinds of people what kind of clients do you end up getting? How do you decide which client is assigned to which therapist? What does supervision look like? How much is supervision? How much will I get paid? What's the community like? How many hours will I get? What happens if I don't get those hours? Will I even receive the number of clients that you're saying that I'm supposed to be receiving? Because like some of the clinics, we're saying like I need to have 10 clients per week, but they were only giving out like 5 clients per week. So it's like really like what's really happening? So those are some of the questions that I asked during this like informational interview type thing. And then once we got through that and confirmed that I'm still interested and they're still interested, then we went into the real interview. And that was me kind of like introducing myself again. And then the main question was like, how do you conceptualize this client? So they gave like a hypothetical situation where a client would come into a session and like, how would I think about this client and how would I work with them? I didn't get that job, which turned out great because it ended up being that like one of the supervisors had to leave and there was like not as much funding. There's all this stuff happening. So yeah, that didn't work out, but that was fine. And then the place that I ended up getting into, I've kind of mentioned, is very specific on doing Gestalt therapy. So yes, it was like pretty obvious that I was going to apply there. So their interview process was like doing an application where you like filled out different questions. Some of them were like, why do you want to work here? What's your relationship to Gestalt therapy? Like, what will community engagement look like? How do you expect to launch your private practice? So practical question like that. And then from the interview process, there was a group interview, and that was like pretty much everyone who was currently in the community interviewed the people who were interviewing, and we kind of just like did an introduction. I don't think there were like questions that we had to answer. It just kind of felt more like a vibe check. And then after that, there were one-on-one interviews. And again, that was like pretty conversational. They just wanted us to know if we had any more questions and if we really felt like we could see ourselves working there, and like really just final check to see if like we really wanted to work together. And then after that, I got the job. And so that's how the interview process went. I need to go check on my bread. The bread turned out looking weird, but probably tastes good. I have to definitely do it again. The chocolate wasn't supposed to melt when I was like rolling it out. But anyways, back to talking about getting into a private practice model. So yeah, one thing I remember somebody mentioning who was like had been a therapist for a little longer was she thought that she shouldn't be going into private practice if she didn't have as much experience. So she ended up working in like community mental health for like 5 years or something, and then switched over to private practice. And she wishes somebody had told her that the work that she was doing when she was in community mental health was just so different from like the problems and the clients that she was seeing in private practice. So the 5 years she thought was like gonna help her in her private practice, but really they didn't seem like as transferable as she had thought. She went into community mental health thinking that it was her like path towards private practice, but she thought that it wasn't necessarily what she needed. And so I'm kind of just going off of that, and also the fact that like I've always wanted to work in private practice, and that's why I'm going straight there, straight out of like as an AMFT. This is my 2nd year, and yeah, I'm gonna do a private practice model, which means I am gonna have to charge my clients a really high amount, and it's probably gonna be out of pocket. So yeah, and you know, with that comes all the business aspects of it as well. I have to market myself, make sure that the expenses that I have make sense. That was a little bit more about like the interview process for getting this private practice position. Yeah, it's a little clunky whenever I say it because I'm not technically doing a private practice because I am in a clinic and I am working under a supervisor. I think technically private practice is if I have my own business and like I am not connected to a clinic. But this clinic and some other clinics, many other clinics work this way in that you basically have a private practice because you have full control over like your rate, your office, your clients. You have full control over that. It's just that you are tied to a clinic. So I just wanted to say that's why I keep saying private practice, but also private practice model clinic, private practice clinic. It's because I am working under a clinic that just has a private practice model. That's it for today. I'll catch y'all later. Bye.